8. We took a week break from this. We were supposed to cover 19 verses last week, but it was our 1-year anniversary, so we wanted to celebrate that. We wanted to talk about that and talk about next steps that we want to take as a church heading into year number 2 in a new location. So, and that next step really is focusing on community life, developing small groups, developing a midweek connection, because Sunday to Sunday is a long time to go if you don't have any connection in between. And as we talked about last week, church is not an event we go to, but it's a church we belong to. That's who we are. We belong to each other. We're members of one another. So we want to establish a sense of continuity during the week. So as we continue to grow, we want to do a good job of discipling people. And there's only so much we can get accomplished on Sunday morning. But in small groups and opening up people's homes, we have the chance to actually get into each other's lives and support each other, pray for each other. And small groups are a great way of doing that, doing life together. So to talk about that, we got the man, the myth, Mr. Don Carter. He's going to come. He's really kind of heading up this area of small groups and developing this realm. So I want him to talk to us a little bit about next steps that we want to take as a church.
Well, good morning, everyone. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather today, so my voice is a little deeper than usual. So, which, yes, that is possible. First off, I want to thank everyone who came and talked to me after church, after service last Sunday. We have plenty of leaders willing to step up and lead small groups, which is phenomenal. We are going to have a small group that is either weekly or meets every other week at Rick Balesta's house to share in a fellowship and worship time. It's going to be phenomenal. We have Butch Barrows is going to lead a monthly Bible study at his place, so that is going to be absolutely exciting. My wife and I are going to start I guess you could call it a couples group where we just want to live life together, where we're going to meet once a month and just kind of hang out, help each other through life and those types of things. So we have a good palette on store for everyone. We do have I just forgot his name. Chris Ford. There we go. Chris Ford has stepped up, and he is going to take over the men's ministry. He is going to lead that going down the road there. We are still needing and wanting someone or someones who will step up and take over the women's ministry. If that feels like a calling on your heart, please come and see me. But our next steps, next Sunday after service, anyone who has stepped up to volunteer to be a leader, we are going to meet and go through a little bit of leader training about what's going on. We'll talk about specific days and times and locations to meet. And then the following week, someone will have a table out in the lobby, hallway, whatever you want to call it. And we'll start getting people signed up to go to these groups and just start living together, start living the church, being around one another, building that sense of community that is so very, very important. And after we get the communities established, then we'll start begging you guys to invite your neighbors and your friends and everyone else, get them into these small groups and use those small groups as a doorway, as a pathway to get people to come here on Sunday morning and be in it a little bit more. Yeah. So things are rolling forward. I wanted to just take a minute, let everyone know that what we talked about last week and the small groups, they're happening. Leader training is coming up in the next week, and within the next couple of weeks, we'll have sign-ups so you guys can sign up for any or all of them. That would be fantastic. We'll make sure to schedule them all on different days, so you guys could be busy 7 days a week if you wanted to. That's kind of our goal. No, not really, actually. We don't want to burn anyone out, but that's coming, and just keep thinking about it. It's going to be fantastic. If you guys want to get plugged in a little bit more, please come see me, come talk to me. I'll be around. I'm really easy to find.
Yeah. All right, Don, thank you. Good. All right, well, so today we are back in our series called Lock It Down. We've been going through the Gospel of John, one passage at a time. And like I said, we're going to handle last week's passage, which is 19 verses, and what was to be this week's passage, which is 29 verses, for a total of 48 verses. Big chunk of scripture we're going to take care of today. Sounds a little ambitious, but I think it actually works quite well, because if you take two passages, last week and this week's, and put them together, what you have is one conversation between Jesus and the Jewish leaders. One long, shall we say, heated conversation. So between Jesus and the Jewish leaders, the tensions are high in this chapter. Okay, so John chapter 8, verse 12 through 59, we're going to be looking at one heated conversation. Sparks are going to fly. And I'm saying they are flying high. In fact, the Jewish leaders become so infuriated with Jesus that they want to kill him at the end of this conversation. That's how bad it went. They want to murder him right then, right there. They were so angry with Jesus, and Jesus didn't back down for 1 second. So this is a major public dispute. What happens when we see some skirmish happen out in the middle of the public square? I mean, people typically want to stop and gather around and watch. Remember in school when you used to go to school, and there used to be like a fight that broke out? People were like, yay, fight, fight! People would come running from all directions and form a circle. And man, it's just something very fascinating about watching a fight unfold. I mean, I was over on Burnside. I think I had my kids with me. And there's two guys literally ripping the shirts off of each other and throwing down, and all the traffic was slowing down because it was something about watching an altercation. Well, today, when we get into this passage, we're going to see an altercation between Jesus and the Jewish leaders of his day. And so we're going to form this circle around this text today. And we're not just going to gawk at what's happening here, but we're going to make some pointed observations and hopefully make some key applications to our life as a result. So let's go ahead and turn to John chapter 8. Like I said, it's a big passage, and it'll take us about 5 minutes to get through it just reading it. But again, there's a big throwdown happening between Jesus and the Jewish leaders, and it's not pretty. John chapter 8, verse 12, and we'll read through verse 59. And again, Jesus spoke to them, saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. So the Pharisees said to him, you are bearing witness about yourself. Your testimony is not true. And Jesus answered, even if I do bear witness about myself, my testimony is true. For I know where I come from and where I'm going, but you do not know where I come from or where I'm going. You judge according to the flesh. I judge no man. Yet even if I do judge, my judgment is true. For it is not I alone who judge, but I and the Father who sent me. In your law it is written that the testimony of two people is true. I am the one who bears witness about myself, and the Father who sent me bears witness about me. They said to him, wherefore, where is your Father? Jesus answered, you know neither me nor my Father. If you knew me, you would know my Father also. And these words he spoke in the treasury as he taught in the temple, but no one arrested him because his hour had not yet come. Verse 21. So he said to them again, I am going away, and you will seek me, and you will die in your sin. Where I am going, you cannot come. So the Jews said to him, will he kill himself, since he says, where I'm going, you cannot come? He said to them, you are from below. I am from above. You are of this world. I am not of this world. I told you that you would die in your sins, for unless you believe in me, that I am he, you will die in your sins. So they said to him, who are you? Who do you think you are? And Jesus said to them, just what I have been telling you from the beginning. I have much to say about you and much to judge, but he who sent me is true, and I declare to the world what I have heard from him. They did not understand that he had been speaking to them about the Father. So Jesus said to them, when you have lifted up the Son of Man, speaking of his death on the cross, speaking of himself, then you will know that I am he, and that I do nothing on my own authority, but speak just as the Father taught me, and he who sent me is with me. He has not left me alone, for I always do the things that are pleasing to him. As he was saying these things, many believed in him. So Jesus said to the Jews who had believed in him, if you abide in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Verse 33, they answered him, saying, meaning the Jewish leaders, we are the offspring of Abraham and have never been enslaved to anyone. How is it that you say you will become free? Jesus answered them, truly, truly, I say to you, everyone who practices sin is a slave to sin. The slave does not remain in the house forever. The Son remains forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. I know that you are offspring of Abraham, yet you seek to kill me because my word finds no place in you. I speak of what I have seen with my Father, and you do what you have heard from your father. They answered him, Abraham is our father. Jesus said to them, if you were Abraham's children, you would be doing the works Abraham did, but now you seek to kill me, a man who has told you the truth that I heard from God. This is not what Abraham did. You are doing the works your father did. They said to him, we were not born of sexual immorality. Starting to get hot here. We have one Father, even God. And Jesus said to them, if God were your Father, you would love me, for I came from God, and I'm here. I came not of my own accord, but he sent me. Why do you not understand what I say? It is because you cannot bear my word. You are of your father, the devil. Your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, and he does not stand in the truth because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is the father of lies. But because I tell you the truth, you do not believe me. Which one of you convicts me of sin? If I tell the truth, why do you not believe me? Whoever is of God hears the words of God. The reason why you do not hear them is that you are not of God. Verse 48, the Jews answered him, are we not right in saying that you are a Samaritan and you have a demon? Jesus answered, I do not have a demon, but I honor my Father, and you dishonor me. Yet I do not seek my own glory. There is one who seeks it, and he is the judge. Truly, truly, I say to you, if anyone keeps my word, he will never see death. The Jews said to him, now we know that you have a demon. Abraham died as the prophets did, yet you say, if anyone keeps my word, he will never taste death. Are you greater than our father Abraham, who died, and the prophets who died? Who do you make yourself out to be? Jesus answered, if I glorify myself, my glory is nothing. It is my Father who glorifies me, of whom you say he is our God. But you have not known him. I know him. If I were to say that I do not know him, I would be a liar like you. But I do know him, and I keep his word. Your father Abraham rejoiced that he would see my day. He saw it and was glad. So the Jews said to him, you are not yet but 50 years old, and have you seen Abraham? And here it is. Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, Before Abraham was, I am. So they picked up stones to throw at him, but Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple. A long passage today, and there's about 900 words being exchanged between Jesus and the leaders. And it's interesting, of the 900 words, about 800 of the words belong to Jesus. And he's saying some outlandish things. I mean, he's making some serious claims about who he is. And so for anyone to think that Jesus is just a moral teacher, he's a guy who just preached forgiveness and love, and he never claimed to be God. For people who say that, clearly haven't read John chapter 8, or for that matter, John chapter 5. Jesus was so explicit and over the top about who he was that you cannot say that he only claimed to be a moral teacher or one who preached love and forgiveness. He preached, I am God. And it was just, over the top. So in this passage here, John chapter 8, verses 12 through 59, he makes 14 explicit claims. And I'm just going to read these for you. This is, if you were to boil down what we just read, this is what he is saying. Check out this stunning list. He says, I am the light of the world. Can you imagine some man standing up and say, I am the light of the world? He says, I am the messenger of truth. I am the judge of mankind. I am the Son of God. I am the authority. I am the one from heaven. I am the object of faith. I am the Savior of the world. I am the messenger of God. I am the Son of Man, which is a divine title from the book of Daniel, chapter 7. I am the perfect expression of God. I am the emancipator from sin. I am the giver of life. And then he just finishes it all off with the divine title, I am. When Moses led the children of Israel out of Egypt and into the wilderness, he had an experience with a burning bush, and God himself spoke out from the bush. And how did he introduce himself? He says, I am that I am. That's God. That is essence of his name. He says, I am. I am. And here's Jesus claiming that title for himself as if he was the one who spoke to Moses, of all people, out of the bush. So this is a stunning chapter. Jesus is making some stunning claims of himself. So, stones were being picked up because, after all, he is committing blasphemy. He's taking the place of God. And it says here in verse 59 that Jesus just like melted into the crowd because his time had not yet come. I love that. And what should amaze us about all this is this. Here is the people, the Pharisees themselves, that are people of the book, who are looking for Messiah, who is devout as you can be, and they had all that they could ever want standing right before them. And yet, they wanted to put him to death. How do you account for that? Of all people who should know who he is, and of all people who should desire him more than them, they have him. He's standing right there, the apple of their eye, the object of their faith, and he's proclaiming his glory, and they should miss it. They should want to take up stones and cast stones at the very one they have been longing for. How do you account for that? So I think this passage today is a huge example of what we would call self-deception. They are deceived about who he is because they are deceived, and we'll get into this, about who they are. They are so self-deceived. They didn't have a problem with Jesus as much as they had a problem with themselves. So I want to entitle this message, Getting Out of the Box. This last couple weeks, I have been looking at a book that some of us have been going through. It's called, I got the book title up here. It's Leadership and what? Self-deception. And you can see the subtitle there is called Getting Out of the Box. And so that's what I'm going to take as the title of this message today, because this is a patent, a clear example of leaders who are clearly in the box. Basically, the premise of the book is this: people have an amazing capacity for self-deception. And self-deception is simply the problem of not knowing you have a problem. You ever been there? Self-deception is the problem of not knowing that you have a problem. And the book calls it being in the box. Others can see in, you can't see out. It's this like willful blindness to recognize the problems that you bring to any problem that you encounter. And those who act as leaders can be particularly vulnerable to being in the box because it's hard for them to see themselves objectively. They want to believe the best in themselves, and they want everybody else to believe the best in themselves, and so that it's hard to see beyond themselves because of their efforts of trying to impress and please and be what you would call successful. And in our passage today, we see leaders, the leaders of Jesus' day, clearly in the box. And perhaps if we look at them close enough, we will see images of ourselves today. So, what are the signs? This is what we're going to look at today. What are the signs of self-deception? How do I know when I am in the box? Well, from this passage, I think there's three questions we can ask. Three questions to ask, and they're here. Am I focusing on my status? Number two, am I focusing on my morality? And number three, am I focusing on the sins of others? If I can answer those questions, or any one of those questions in the affirmative, it's more likely that I'm in the box. And the first step of getting out of the box is recognizing you're there. So, let's look at these questions one by one. Am I focusing on my status? First question. In verse 33 and verse 39, we're not going to work through this passage chronologically. I'm just going to pick observations, and then we're going to handle it that way. But in verses 33 and 39, we hear the Jewish leaders saying something like this: "We are the offspring of Abraham. Abraham is our father." And they are referring back to Genesis 12, when God chose a man out of the country of Ur, out of a Gentile country, to be his own and to represent him. And so he says, Abraham, I'm going to bless you, and I'm going to bless all your children, and I want you in turn to be a blessing to the world, and you're going to be the line in which I bring Messiah through, and so you're going to serve as my chosen people. And so here are the Jewish leaders, millennia later, saying that we are the chosen race. We are God's special people. We bear a special status. We are the children of Abraham. So they took pride in the status over against who they thought Jesus was, because later on in verse 48, they called him a Samaritan. which are these half-breeds that aren't like really purely Jew, but they're just kind of half this, and so they kind of look down their nose at Samaritans, and they knew a little bit about his illegitimate birth, and so they thought, oh, well, he's just a Samaritan. We are the pure stock of Abraham. And so this is what you would call an insider mentality. They had developed an idea about themselves that they were on the inside and Jesus was on the outside. And anytime you develop this insider mentality, you can know that you're inside the box. I wonder if this is what has happened to Amber Geiger. You guys know about her? She's all over the news right now. It's a phenomenal story in some aspects and very confusing in others. But basically, she is the police officer who walked into the wrong apartment and opened fire, killing a man, an unarmed man. No questions asked. I mean, just boom, and just she didn't step out. She didn't figure out. It just boom, just killed the man because she thought she was in her own apartment. I wonder if she thought that since she was a police officer or law enforcement, that she can carry her gun around on a hair trigger and just pull the trigger with no questions asked, because she thought, well, she's law enforcement, and she spent 13 hours that day in law enforcement. She came home and she was still in that mentality. And I'm not saying that all police officers are like this, but focusing on your status can put you in the box. So if you enjoy any privilege or cherish any special knowledge about yourself that makes you different, it can actually distort reality. Scout stepped into an apartment. She thought it was her own, and she was maybe entitled or something that she could just take action that quickly. And yeah, the stories turn out quite beautifully in some aspects. The younger brother has extended forgiveness, the forgiveness of Jesus Christ, and that's beautiful. But while our capacity for self-deception can sometimes be distorted by the status that we wear. Because listen to how thoroughly the Jewish leaders distort reality. They say, we are the children of Abraham and have never been enslaved to anybody. Oh, really? 400 years in Egypt? Curious. That is a curious statement. We have never been enslaved to anybody. And I think their reality has become distorted because, again, I think they're in another world of their own because of their status. So if our status causes our eyes to turn inwards, you can bet we can lose an outside perspective. So if you enjoy some privilege, like, I have a fancy degree, or I have, I'm the supervisor, or I'm the boss, or I live in a nice neighborhood, or I have money in the bank, I think we should just be careful that that's not our focus. Are you focusing on your status? Because that can quickly turn you sideways into a realm of deception, distorted reality. So the first question here we can look at, am I focusing on my status? The next question is this. Equally troubling is, am I focusing on my morality? Morality. Because in verse 41, the leaders were like, we were not born of sexual immorality, indicating that here's Jesus over here. And they knew that Jesus was born out of wedlock, so to speak. Mary and Joseph had not consummated the marriage, and so I think that was the word on Jesus, and so they were holding that against him, which put them on the high moral ground. We can feel pretty good about our morality, our good behavior, our clean record. Sometimes that outshines another person's record. I mean, we feel pretty good about ourselves. I mean, and when I'm feeling really good about myself, I got to be really careful. Like if I'm like really faithful in my Bible reading, praying every day, man, I'm staying out of sin, I'm living in victory. It's those times when I seem to be maybe the hardest on other people. Why don't you just get your stuff and, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Let's get going. I feel like, what are you doing? I'm doing so well. And so I got to be very careful. I call this checkbox spirituality. I got all my boxes checked. Every day I'm doing so well. I'm so faithful. And I check all the boxes. And it puts me in the situation to think that I'm doing better than most people. Because I got all the boxes checked. And listen, there is not a deeper and darker deception than to think our personal morality makes us better. Our personal morality actually makes us worse if we lose sight of grace. It's all based on grace. And if we have just pulled ourselves up by the bootstraps and done real well, checked all the boxes, we are self-deceived. Actually, personal morality makes us worse if it takes us away from grace. And that's what Christ is all about. Christ is all about grace. Where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. Jesus came for the sinners. He didn't come for the righteous. You guys are, hey, great, you guys have got it all figured out. You got all the boxes checked. I'm going to go over here. These guys need me. They want me, and I'm going to stay with these. These are my people. Sinners, these are my people. Grace, grace, grace. And yet they missed him. They missed him. Because an inflated view of self, listen guys, will always lead to a deflated view of Christ. If you have an inflated view of yourself, you will always have a deflated view of Christ. He won't be glorious to you. He won't be beautiful to you. His grace won't be received by you because you're fine by your own standards. You're righteous. So he's not going to be beautiful. An inflated view of self will lead to a deflated view of Christ. And they had one of the most deflated views of Jesus you can ever ask for. And one of the biggest inflated views of themselves. So the questions: am I focusing on my status? Am I focusing on my morality? If I am, I'm surely going to be in the box and leading a very self-deceived life. And the third question is this: am I focusing on the sins of others? This is a biggie. Look at verses 58 and 59. It says here, truly, truly, Jesus says, truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, boom, I am. The punchline of the whole conversation. I am that I am. He's claiming divinity. I am God. I am the Son of God. I am Messiah. So, verse 59, they picked up stones to throw at him. I find it very interesting that chapter 8 begins with them trying to get Jesus to help them stone the adulteress. Remember that just 2 weeks ago? They pulled in the adulteress by the scruff of her neck and said, hey, we caught her in the act of adultery. And so hey, what do you say, Jesus? Let's stone her. That's the beginning of chapter 8. And the end of chapter 8 ends with them wanting to stone Jesus. I mean, they're going around just picking up stones. They're so busy finding fault in everybody else. And I'm saying if we're quick to pick up stones, If we're quick to accuse people, even in our heart, we might not like verbally do it, but even if we take count and just find fault, and accuse and make accusations and just complain about everybody else, laying blame on everybody else, is probably a strong indicator that we are in the box, suffering from a bad case of self-deception, because it's everybody else's fault. So here's the three main symptoms of self-deception. And we're going to get to the good news here. This is kind of a hard text, and so, hey, if you're going to preach the text, you're going to, hey, if it's hard, then the preaching is going to be hard. But look at this. Three major symptoms, and then we'll get to the good news. We'll get to the medicine. But here's the sickness. The three major symptoms are these: status, morality, fault-finding. If your status makes you feel better, you're likely deceived. If your morality makes you feel better, you're likely walking in self-deception. And if finding fault in others makes you feel better, you're likely deceived. And the problem is, all these things make us feel better. But do not trust them. Do not place your trust in these things. Yes, they make you feel better. Your having a nice status. Oh yeah, it feels nice. Hey, look at me. I've achieved something. I got some reputation. Or if your morality makes you feel better. You got all the boxes of your spiritual life checked and you're doing really well, walking in victory. Wow, that can make you feel better. And then, sometimes looking at others and going, why can't they just get it together, That can make you feel better. But I think the lesson here is do not trust them, because all of these are a form of self-righteousness. Status, morality, finding fault, self-righteousness. Makes us feel better, but do not trust it. Don't trust it. Don't go there. If you do, you will be a prime candidate for self-deception. And that's what these Jews, these Jewish leaders were, in the box, deep in the box. Verse 44 calls the devil the father of lies. These are the lies he hatches. Your status. Hey, look at your status. Look at your morality. Okay? Find the fault in other folks and, hey, you'll be good. You'll feel good about yourself. But those are the lies that he hatches. Status is a liar. Morality, finding fault, all those are liars. Because they all make us feel better. But in the end, they leave us deep in the box. So the enemy's greatest weapons in life are lies. And those are some of the biggest ones. So, how do we get out of the box? How do we find our way out of a place of self-deception? And I think the answer is again found in this passage. It's verse 32. It says this: you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Who's the truth? Truth is not some just abstract thing that just, some philosophy that we adopt in life. And we could study all of our life and come up with a pretty good philosophy, but I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about abstraction. I'm talking about something very, very concrete and very personal. Jesus himself said in this chapter, in this book, John chapter 14, that I am the way. I am the truth. I am the life. No man comes to the Father but through me. I am the pathway, but I am the truth. If you want to personalize truth, get to know Jesus. In this book that we're looking at, Leadership and Self-Deception, one of the great ways they say of getting out of the box is stop resisting. Because once we start resisting, then we have these defenses up, and then we want to explain everything. Stop resisting. And the word today is, if you want to know the truth, stop resisting the truth. And the truth is Jesus. Sometimes we resist. He puts things on our heart. And the book talked about self-betrayal. When you betray yourself, you betray something that you know you should have done. And so sometimes Jesus moves upon our heart. Hey, go talk to that person. Hey, I want you to humble yourself in that situation. Hey, I want you, and he prompts, and if you betray that, then you need to justify that, why you didn't do that. And then the walls start going up, and then you start boxing yourself in from all sides because you have to defend something. If you don't have anything to defend, you don't need to defend. And you can step out of the box and live a life of just, hey, man, okay, hey, I'm fresh, I'm open, I'm out. That's life out of the box. It's relationship with Jesus, and when he speaks, you act, you move. But if you don't, then you betray yourself. Betray the very thing you know you need to do, and then all of a sudden you need to defend what you didn't do. And that puts you in the box. These guys were a patent example of someone who lived in the box, and it's something we don't want to do. Status, morality, fault finding, leave that box, leave those walls behind, and step out into a whole new world of knowing, loving, and obeying Jesus. He's given us his Spirit by grace. And all we need to do is just live by the dictates of his Spirit and walk out into a brand new life of loving, worshiping, trusting, believing, submitting, and worshiping Jesus. That's John chapter 8. That's the heart. If the Son sets you free, you are free indeed. And that's the kind of life I want to live. How about you? Amen. I'm going to have the team come back up. I'm going to sing one last song of worship. Hey, this is straight. The intent of these sermons is that we're just going to pull it right out of the text, right out of the Bible, and we're just going to lay it on the table. And this is not a word from Demetrius. I hope it to be a word from God to us. And anytime he speaks, I'm teaching my kids, hey, anytime I talk to you, you need to come up with a response. So what is your response? And so every sermon or every message requires a response. What is your response this morning? That's why we do this last song. It's a chance for you to stand to your feet and in your own heart and in your own connection with Jesus, it's going to look different all across the room. What is that response? And so that's what this last song is all about. God has spoken. What's our response? And that's what's called having a relationship with Jesus. So let's stand to our feet. Let's sing this last song together as a response to him and his word.